Good morning and welcome to Teach Me Bees. I'm your host, Dave Wescott. This morning I've got with me co-host Scott the Beekeeper. Today we are talking about some really fun things, and those fun things have to do with diseases.
That's right. You know, everyone's favorite topic. Bad things. Diseases. Pests.
So did you go to the doctor and something happened?
No, actually, every time I go to the doctor, they tell me I'm a beacon of health.
They tell you that you're a beacon of health.
That's right. But then I go to the dentist and they're like, hey, you need to floss more before we have issues. So, you know, I don't know.
Well, since you
I'm
just turned
healthy-ish.
23.
Something to the effect, you know.
I'm just kidding.
I did
28?
shave some a little bit. And
28?
Yeah. And my wife, because, you know, sometimes you do things for your wife. And she's like, I want to see what it would be like, you know. And I was like, I'm going to be a teenager, and yep, I looked very young for a few days, and it's coming back. But
oh, so you shaved some of the face off for your wife?
Yeah, she wanted to see, because as long as I've known her, I've had a pretty thick-ish beard, because I don't like to look like I'm 16. So.
Now, you know, that's an interesting concept. We're talking today about pests and diseases and all things unnatural. And I typically never have a beard.
I'd say you look good with that.
You might have seen a little bit of a resemblance of some facial hair yesterday, which was because I did not shave while I was away on my trip because I did not have a razor. Therefore, I was, you know, I don't know.
I guess you could have bought a razor if you really wanted to.
Yeah, but I own a razor, so why would I buy another razor?
It's like, you know, just one of those, like, cheap ones that you can just toss away at the end of the trip or something like that.
I don't like those.
Okay. I don't blame you. Those hurt.
They do hurt. They do hurt.
They're meant to be used for like 2 days.
Yeah, they're really painful. They cut your face, you know, whatever. I guess I could have bought one, but I already own one, so I decided to let it fly. How did I look yesterday, Ralph? I was growing in a kind of a beard type thing going on.
I thought you looked great. Scruffy Dave, you know.
I was kind of scruffy, wasn't I? So yeah, so that's nice. So thanks, Ralph. So you go to the doctor, they tell you need to floss more.
Well, the dentist does. The doctor doesn't look at my teeth.
The dentist, yeah. So yesterday I was at the dentist.
Really? Okay. How are your teeth? They look good from here.
They are a beautiful set of teeth. So I've got a tooth that has to be capped. I've known about it for...
It's like your brood.
6 months. It's got a crack. It's a crack in the tooth.
That's not good.
I was hoping that I could pass it by. But now it's on the calendar.
Does it ever cause you pain?
You know, it causes me pain when I touch it.
Okay.
But as long as I'm not touching it, it's fine. No, but seriously, so the whole thing, you know, I share a lot about the influence that my dad had on me growing up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, no cartoons, Simba. You know, that kind of life that I lived. Scott's like, don't go there again, man. Listen, we don't want to talk about these freaking cartoons again. But one of the things is that my dad is anti-beard, anti-facial hair.
Okay.
Completely. And he says that somebody who has facial hair is hiding something. They're hiding behind something. They're not them true selves. So my dad doesn't like facial hair, doesn't like beards, doesn't like any of that. And so if you ever were to start to grow some stubble or a partial beard around my dad, now you look at my brother Jim and he's got a beard from, you know, I don't know, Israel or something. I don't know. He's got a serious beard. But, you know, like my dad's pestering just wore me down to such a degree that I just can't grow a beard. I can grow a beard.
Physically, it's possible.
Physically it's possible. I just can't do it because I don't like the idea of hiding behind something. I don't like the idea of not being myself. I don't like the idea of not being true or real. I'm not saying that that's you or Ralph or anybody who might have a beard or even my brother Jim. But what I'm saying is that for me, based on the experiences of me growing up, it just... Gosh, I can't do it. And even though I kind of like the way I look with a beard, I was kind of liking the way I was looking yesterday. I was kind of feeling it, I
Yeah,
was kind of
yeah.
like, this looks pretty good on me. And
But you can't get yourself to do it.
but this morning I took the razor to the face and I cut it all back.
Well, looking good today. Looking good.
I don't
Anyone
know if,
listening
I
out
don't know
there,
if that's
tune
appropriate or
Tune
not.
in on video. You can check out Dave Cleanly Shaven, YouTube, Facebook, wherever.
That's right. I'm cleanly shaven.
Looking good today.
I'm fresh as baby's breath.
But you know what doesn't look good?
What?
Is varroa mites in your hive.
Yeah, so interestingly enough, I just got back from the TV show,
What was this TV show?
reality TV show that I was on,
Wow.
The Blocks.
Okay.
The Blocks TV show, reality TV show. I filmed season 13. Okay.
Wow.
And reality TV was a lot of fun. I can't give up some secrets here on the live podcast of Teach Me Bees, but I spent 6 days talking about bees
Okay.
from 12 to 16 hours a day.
There's a lot of bee talk. Well, talking in general.
It's a lot of talking in general. It's a lot of talking about bees. And, one of the things that I talked about was varroa mite and the impact of varroa mite on hives and hive loss and, what that means to our world and what that means to population. Talked about the infection of varroa mite in Australia, which had previously had no varroa mite up
Yep.
until this
very
year,
recently.
I believe.
Yep.
So, just what does that impact look like? And I talked to celebrities about bees. I talked to, because there was some celebrity, judges on the show. I have a lot of commitments from people to buy honey.
Awesome.
Like insane amount of people want to buy our honey, which is really, really exciting. But we talked about the impact, of bees and of varroa mite and what that means. And, as a backyard beekeeper, I think really being prudent on your hive management is critical. And there's a lot of, folks out there that'll say, like start working these processes, go more organic. Your bees can, develop a resilience.
Yeah, resistant bees.
I think is good. But I also think like on this journey, it really opened my eyes up to, natural bee populations. And what I really want to share about that is like, one of the things that I think we talked about, maybe a few podcasts ago was, bees in New England. And there's a specific bee that, pollinates the blueberry farms in Massachusetts and our New England area. And, that bee is pretty much extinct. And it's extinct because, people have built houses and roads and cars. And listen, I'm not saying don't build a building and save a beehive, right? Like I'm not that much of a environmentalist, because I believe in production and growth and all of those sort of things. But it really got me thinking to the type of bees that we have here today. And our bees that we have on our bee farm, the Honey for Hope bee farm, are from Saskatchewan, Canada, and Italy. And they're a cross-pollinated bee that we use. We believe it thrives well. We believe it does well. But one of the things that I've really been thinking of is what happened to the natural wild honeybee in Washington. Why is that not the bee that's in our hives?
Mm-hmm.
And so doing research on it, and I don't know that the research is on Google is always 100% correct. I can't confirm or deny that.
Yeah.
It's just like when you go to the doctor and you're talking about a disease, right?
For sure.
Or you get a symptom. Let's say something happens to your body and you're like, what the frick is this? Because this is a PG show. We don't cuss on here. What is this? And we're Christian people, so we try not to cuss. But regardless of that, you find something on your body and you Google it.
You want to get an opinion. Yeah.
Yeah. And when you call Dr. Google or look up Dr. Google, you can get some pretty frightening responses.
Careful on that WebMD.
Yeah,
MD.
Your
Yeah, be
wife is
careful
a
there.
nurse, right?
No, she's in school to do ultrasound. Yeah.
Oh, ultrasound. Okay. So does she have any nursing experience?
No, but I have a couple friends that are nurses.
Okay. Male or
Two or three.
male or
My
female?
wife.
Oh, Ralph's nice as a nurse. So when Ralph has a problem on a particular part of his body, we'll just say
Self-diagnosis.
above the waist,
PG.
above the waist, you can go to your wife and say, "What is this?"
Yes.
And she's going to 99% know what it is.
That's crazy.
And so that's really comforting.
Very.
Yeah, I actually love that. That's a great thing. But so like I'm doing research and I'm trying to decide like, and so I don't know research right or wrong or indifferent, but the basic Washington bee is gone.
Yeah, most bees that we have now, at least from North America standpoint, are they were brought over in the 1600s by colonists, settlers, and so they're European-based bees that have over the centuries become normalized.
But
So
what about the
technically
natural
they'd be
bee?
considered invasive.
What about the natural bee that was here pollinating before they came over?
I don't really know much about that bee.
That bee is
it didn't survive.
those
is the point.
those bees have been extinct.
For whatever reason,
And-
they didn't make it.
And here's the explanation that I found that made the most sense.
Okay.
So in a and listen to the fact checkers out there and those folks, if I get a fact wrong here, whatever, throw it in the comments.
Let us know.
Let us, whatever, let's discuss it. And I don't even know that if it's right or wrong because of these things happening so long ago. And so the best kind of scenario that I can, kind of piece together from Dr. Google is there was a natural honeybee in the state of Washington where we're located. And that honeybee would basically come out and play in, April, May
Mhm.
of a specific year. And that would be a queen. And that queen bee would go and would be flying, and that bee would get mated with. And when that bee was mated with, it would go and it would start creating a hive. And that hive might be in a log, that hive might be on a tree. Sometimes bees don't put their hives in the smartest of spaces, but let's just say it's in a tree and it goes in and now it starts laying eggs and it's been fertilized, I don't know, by maybe 50 other bees. I don't know, I can't tell you what that looks like, but now it starts to produce, and it produces male bees and drones, and it produces female bees, workers. And now that bee goes out and it makes honey, and it's making honey all summer, and the hive is growing and the hive is living. And then it's getting to be towards wintertime. And what happens is that bee, the drones on that hive, they get pushed away and they die. And then eventually the female workers in the hive also get pushed out and die. And the queen bee goes and hibernates, if you will, because the winters are too cold and too wet for the hive to really survive over the wintertime. And what happens is that bee would burrow itself into a nesting situation of leaves, of someplace where it could be warm, someplace where it could hibernate, someplace where it could hide and hang out. And it would typically hide out in its natural habitat, like a thicket or like some heavy brush cover.
Yeah.
And then in the spring it would do the same thing again, and that bee might live for 2 or 3 years, and then another queen would come on, and it just kind of like the evolutional cycle of that bee.
Yep.
And that's kind of what happened. And so in just reading and researching it, it seemed to me that what happened was the natural habitat of the bees, as we began to create civilization, we began to create dirt roads and buildings. And, you can look back at pictures of Seattle in, 1842 or whatever. We just began to displace the bee without care or thought of the bee. And so that was, that seems to be what I can piece together as the extinction of the Washington honeybee. And I don't know how, accurate and accurate that is. And so, then bees come from Europe and people are bringing bees over from Europe, like you've explained. And so now today, the bees that we have and that we utilize are, from European-based and Canadian-based, right? Saskatchewan, based bee, and that bee does well. But the truth of the matter is, it's not in its natural habitat. And then we introduce varroa mite, and I think that's one of the purposes of our call here today, is to really discuss what varroa mite looks like. And so varroa mite comes from another country.
Yeah, a few different things that we wanted to touch on today. Varroa mite's the big one, and I don't want to beat a dead horse in a sense. Like, we've talked about it, we've had guests talk about it, but we do want to reference it as one of the pests. It's the biggest issue facing the honeybee today globally. Varroa mite. Go back and listen to our call with Randy Oliver if you want some information on maybe another perspective on how to deal with varroa mite. But it's the most common issue. They get in the brood, specifically drone brood, because drones have a longer laying period. It takes 24 days for a drone to emerge. So that's where the varroa mites love to chill out and multiply and reproduce. And typically, it's a little bit of a hard science, but one varroa mite can become 3, 4, 5 inside that brood of just one cell, and then they, when they emerge, they go out into some other cells. That's how they multiply in a hive. They can be hard to identify when they're in the capped brood, but then you'll see them later on the back of bees or underneath a bee. And when you see them at that point, it may or may not be too late to do anything about it, which is why you need to be doing regular testings and then have treatments such as oxalic acid or putting in different strips, which is, it's recommended to, or at least what I've heard is twice a year, maybe 3 or 4 times even, to do specific treatments. Definitely in the spring, coming out of the winter, and then before the winter, end of fall. Those are like the 2 big times. They definitely do treatments at that time. But varroa, it's something to consider, to be careful of. And basically, I've been listening to some podcasts and listening to other people, and they're saying, the honeybee colony is actually 4 subspecies. It's the queen, or not subspecies, but types. It's the queen, it's the drone, it's the worker, and the varroa, because your varroa is going to be there. And it's how do you manage it in there? Yeah. And so that's why we want to create resistant bees to varroa, because it's going to be there, until we have that resistance built up, which is going to take a long time. And unfortunately,
which may never even happen in our lifetime.
We don't know. But we can just do our part to try and have resistant bees.
Yeah, like it's one of those things that we have to battle. But there's a lot of different mechanisms. It may be even fun to take our podcast on the road and do like just get into the hives, mic'd up in the hives, looking at them, doing the testing, doing some varroa treatment. That might be kind of a fun thing to do on the show at one point. But so that's varroa. We've talked about it. Pests. So you mentioned pests. You talk about some pests.
Yeah, there's another big mite that I would say is worth noting right now. It's called the tracheal mite. And so, tracheal, it's something that helps you breathe. It's your respiratory system. So this mite actually attacks the breathing mechanism of the honeybees, and when I can't breathe, that ain't good. I'm going to die, when you're out of breath. I mean, I don't know about anyone out there listening, but sometimes when I run, I am out of breath rather quickly and I need to take a second to breathe. You imagine trying to fly when you can't breathe. It doesn't go very well, right? Like it's not good.
I like to think of being in a pool.
Yeah, hold your breath underwater.
Yeah, underwater.
Stresses me out. I don't love it.
I just was, when I said I like to think of myself in a pool, I was reminded of the part of Talladega Nights when Who's the John? What's his name? John what? John C. Riley says, I picture Jesus in a tuxedo with a Leonard Skinner shirt. And what does he say? Have you seen that movie?
I've seen parts of it, but not succinctly.
Anyway, rabbit holing there. Can't remember the exact line.
It's all good.
But it's funny. It's a funny line. And Talladega Nights is a pretty funny show. So we've got this tracheal mite. It's gonna block the air passages. You can't see it to the naked eye.
Yeah,
so you need a telescope.
But like varroa, you could definitely see it, like as a little red speck on your bee. A tracheal mite, though, you can't see it with the naked eye. So that's something that you would have to take like your frame and put it under a microscope.
So for the listeners out there today,
mm-hmm.
we've all been. So I just want to talk about this now. Let's say that I was to go out on my barbecue patio and I was to look at the top of the barbecue patio and I see these little red mites that look microscopic.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes there's thousands of them. And they're crawling all over the place. Do you know what I'm talking about? Have you ever seen these?
No.
I've seen them for years. Maybe it's because I was a gardener.
Yeah. I
wonder, is that varroa mite?
I'm not really sure. My guess would probably not. Probably a different mite, because they like to. Part of the varroa is it attaches to bees for food, for feeding, and it's a safe environment to be in. So
yeah,
probably not.
All right, well,
but a couple ways to identify if you have a tracheal mite problem, which you're probably gonna identify in the fall, based on patterns that have been studied, at least here in the Northwest. Your bees are going to be unable to fly. They're going to be weak. Their wings might be in a K shape. So typically when they fly, their wings connect, creating a big wing. But their wings might be disjointed, looking like a K. And that's how you're going to know, wow, something's going on with my bee. They're not functioning right. And it's probably a tracheal mite cutting off their oxygen, cutting off their ability to breathe and survive. And some of the treatments that work for varroa also work for tracheal mites. There's different strips that work for both. So do some research, read what strips you would like to get or what treatment options there are. There's this thing called a grease patty that you'd put 6 cups of granulated white sugar and 3 cups of hydrogenated vegetable shortening, or Crisco. And it makes 10 portions, 10 servings that you can put on your hives. I haven't tried that personally, but that is something that I've seen. So that might be a
it actually sounds kind of good.
Not for me, but you can have that as your mid-morning snack if you want. I can go cook you some.
You don't like Crisco?
Not my go-to.
How do you not love Crisco?
I mean, it's fine. It's not like I'm scooping it out of the container, just sitting down on the couch.
Nobody does that.
Okay.
We fry up some bacon with that Crisco.
Oh, bacon I can do.
You take a big dollop. I'm going to say dollop. You take a big dollop of Crisco, you dump it on the pan, and you fry up some bacon. That's going to be smelling good in the house.
It's going to smell good. It's going to smell a lot better than varroa or tracheal mites. Or the next couple of things we want to mention, European Foulbrood and American Foulbrood, which are both concerning issues in your hive.
Very concerned.
We'll start with European Foulbrood, which is a bacteria. Both of these you're going to notice when you pull out your frames and you look at your brood.
Yep.
They're going to be in shotgun patterns. So rather than a succinct section of brood, they're going to be scattered around, which is a first warning sign. They're going to be capped over and concaved, sometimes even punctured. And they're going to not look right. It's plain and simple. Your brood should be like a nice brownish color, succinct together. This is going to be scattered, discolored, maybe white, and then not like a honey capped white, but this like gross color. So if that happens, if you have European Foulbrood, your larvae probably is, well, it is dead, but it died before it even got capped, which is kind of gross. And then it got capped over. The bees, didn't know it was dying.
Explain for the audience capping.
So your brood, that's your baby bees. That's the next generation of bees. Your larvae, the egg gets put into the comb, turns into a larvae, it's fed, and then it gets capped over. That capping process is the last phase of the metamorphosis, of the transition that happens before it then emerges from the capping.
And how many bees are laid every day?
It depends. In peak season, queens can, depending on how fertile and healthy your queen is, can lay from 1,500 to 3,000 eggs a day in peak season. So I would say maybe June-ish could be peak season.
If we get European Foulbrood in our hive, it's a big deal.
It's a big deal.
It's thousands of bees.
Yeah, it's not necessarily going to kill the entire hive, although it is concerning. Some of the biggest things you can do to combat it: have good apiary hygiene. I know that sounds maybe basic or
It's
simple.
kind of like flossing your teeth.
Floss your teeth. Dentist always tells me to do that more.
Brush at night.
Yep, brush. Wash your hair. Greasy hair is not great. Do basic things in your apiary. So if you have dead bees on the entry of your hive, clean them off. Get them out of there. See what's just going on. Have a clean apiary is one of the big things. You may have to requeen your hive. Your queen may be not very sensitive to the cleanliness in the hive, so maybe you need to requeen with a hive that is more sensitive
There's
to cleaning.
nothing worse than a woman who won't clean.
I'd say anyone who just doesn't clean, which is kind of funny. My wife would say, "You don't clean very much," and I'd say, "I think I do," but anyways.
I don't clean at all.
Well, it's a good thing you got some kids to clean up.
I do zero cleaning.
He admits it on the podcast, everybody.
I do zero cleaning. Listen, I do zero cleaning, but I keep my areas very clean. Like there's some husbands who come home and they just drop their clothes in a pile on the floor and expect wife to clean it up. Listen, I do none of that. I hang up my clothes. I put my clothes away. I keep my sink clean. I keep my areas clean. The things I do and use, I keep very cleanly. You're not going to, I'm not leaving a mess around. I don't leave cups upstairs. I'm not going to have a bathroom full of cups like you will see in some houses. I'm not going to leave trash or debris on the floor. Like I'm a very clean person by nature. Therefore, I'm a big believer in having a clean house, meticulously clean, perfectly clean, almost hospital sterilized clean house. Then you have kids. That actually goes out the window. We're not going to go there because we've got 2 minutes left on this show, but we do want a queen that's going to keep her house in order.
Yes.
And so we may have to replace the queen before we get too unnerved in our world.
We're about to wrap up here, but I do want to note American Foulbrood because it is far more serious than European Foulbrood. And it typically attacks the larvae. It's a bacteria that attacks the larvae in the first 3 days of their life, and they'll die in that capped season or in that capped time period. So typically, a European Foulbrood will die right before. American Foulbrood will die when it happens. Die in there. It's again concave brood, spotty, random. It's going to maybe appear wet or greasy. And you may actually have a strong odor or smell that comes in it. So it's foul brood,
That's
foul
not good.
smell.
That's not
And
good.
the only way you can deal with it, there's some treatments maybe being developed you could look into, but the safest thing to do is to burn your hive, to burn your equipment so that it doesn't spread. It's potentially that contagious and deadly to your hives. It's recommended to burn your equipment.
So it reminds me of the movie Outbreak when the Ebola outbreak happens and they literally are thinking about nuking a city. That's how bad this American Foulbrood is. So, because I tie a lot back to the movies, I enjoy the movies, as you cannot tell. Let's bring this thing in for a landing. So we had a great call today. We talked about pests and diseases. Varroa mite, right? The biggest issue, and most people are aware of varroa mites. We talked about how to treat that, varroa strips, acidic treatments within the hive. We talked about tracheal mites that affect the respiratory passage. We talked about, how we can, take care of treating these, and that's the grease patties. We want to go back and make sure that those are taken care of. We talked about European Foulbrood. We talked about how to treat that, and what that looks like, and then obviously we want to keep a clean house. That's
right.
really where we want to be and what we want to look like. And then we've got American Foulbrood, and what does that look like, and how do we treat that? And really, what we're doing there is, there's antibiotics that can, be given from a vet, but the safest thing to do is burn the hive to the ground and just start over. So that's what we've learned today. It's been a great call. Follow us every week. We love doing this. We love learning about bees. There's so much that we learn about every week. I feel like this call makes me a smarter beekeeper. And at the end of the day, we love what we're doing. Honey for Hope, right? We give our profit back to charity. Support Honey for Hope. If you need pollination, hit us up. If you are looking for honey, reach out to us. We'd love to get you on the list, because all of the profit goes back to charity. We're doing great work, not only for the environment, but for the world. I'm Dave Wescott. Follow me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, anywhere we're at social. I'm hanging out. Check us out every week. If you like this show, give us a like, give us a share. I know these are a lot of call to actions. We love being here, Scott, as usual. Great preparation, great job on the call. Way to really bring the details and the heat. I feel like you are just crushing it. So thank you very much. And we'll see you guys next week.
That's right. See you next time.